Here's a very interesting question that I happen to possess the answer to. Why does it seem that many MCU projects appeal to a wider audience as opposed to geeks? So the question is, hey guys, this statement might sound counterintuitive. After all, the MCU has tons of guys in costumes with superpowers. It could be a geek's wet dream. However, it's not true at all. If you look at many Marvel projects, you will see that much of the humor is meant towards the wider audience as opposed to the geeks. For instance, look at the first Avengers first film. Tony, Captain, and Thor make fun of each other's suits. Another example is Doctor Strange, who's constantly making fun of how ridiculous this whole superhero adventures are. Joss Whedon is one of the main architects of this style of humor. Some people might say it's clever, but you'll see that his humor ends up appealing more and more to the wider audience and less to the geeks. French filmmaker Jean-Pierre Jeunet also has made some insightful observations about Whedon's humor. In fact, shows like WandaVision could very well be sitcoms without any superhero elements and still look the same. I recently saw the first Shazam, and there was much more sincerity in that compared to many of the Marvel projects that I see. And I felt that there was a plot and a story to the film was trying to tell. Compare that to WandaVision, where the story of Quicksilver is dropped for the sake of humor and plot twists. It's not the first time that this has happened to Mysterio, where all of a sudden a plot twist changed the whole story. While the DC and the DC Expanded Universe may not be known commercially as well as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I do feel that there's more to the story. Alright, now, I do not fault the opening poster for not knowing due to the fact that there has been a lot of historical revisionism going on, and it's very difficult to actually figure out the past unless you happen to have lived in the 90s or have a friend that did. Because the official story is that geeks were cisgender straight white men, and for reasons that nobody can explain, they were very misogynistic, sexist, and racist. And they created a boys-only club. However, through the guidance of people more kind, compassionate, and enlightened, such as journalists from geekdom communities and activists like Rita Sarkeesian and many other people, they have forced diversity and inclusivity into the fandom, and now it caters to a wider audience. But in reality, if you actually lived in the 90s, most people, especially jocks and women and others, they would look at people who read comic books or played video games or enjoyed Dungeons and Dragons. They would look at them like social pariah. Like, if you read comic books, or if you happen to enjoy video games, you are radioactive to pussy. Like, women would come up to you and say, like, what is wrong with you? Why are you still a child? Like, only children read comic books. Only children play games. You need to start watching football. You need to buy a car. And go work at the gym. Do manly things. So, being part of geekdom, if you will, was something very marginalizing. And again, it wasn't that geeks didn't want to integrate with the wider audience. It was that the wider audience wanted to have nothing to do with geeks. So, if you were at a high school and you happened to be shy, or you were a little bit autistic and you had difficulty making friends and connections, and you didn't know how to become popular, there were like a group of wizards over in the last bench that would meet each other every Saturday, and they would play Heroes of Might and Magic, maybe read some comic books, or play Dungeons and Dragons. And if you were part of that group, then no one wanted to sit at your table. Like, if you sat at the popular kids table, you're being thrown out. If you sat next to the popular girls, they would walk out, right? Like, that was how it was perceived. It was kind of like being a right-winger at a liberal arts university, right? Like, you are toxic to people. And all of that happened for quite a few years, up until you have popular shows like The Big Bang Theory, and you have like the first Marvel movies. And it's at that point that the wider audience noticed, hold on a little bit, like all of these comic books and all of these video games, they're actually quite good. Like, there's actually something that's to be had there. And especially if you look at Marvel movies like Iron Man and Thor, they casted some really hot actors. So, like, there were a lot of women that wanted to see Thor because he was a manly stud. And they like seeing that. So all of a sudden, as the most, the female audience starts going in, reading comic books isn't being perceived as something bad, isn't being perceived as something childish. It now becomes something trendy, something cool. You see people wearing Iron Man t-shirts and Marvel t-shirts and stuff. So the individuals like making these comic books and making these art forms are like, okay, well, now we can appeal to the wider audience. So by appealing to the wider audience, they turn their backs at the old-time fans, the people who actually build the industry with their money and sweat. And they're like, okay, well, let's hire people from the wider audience. And once you hire people from the wider audience, you get WandaVision. You get soap operas, and you get, right? Because like they literally tried to switch their fandom. And by doing so, the geeks are now watching anime, and they're watching other things that interest them. While I guess like a very small fringe minority of people watch WandaVision. Because the reality is that if geeks wanted to watch soap operas, they could have watched the telenovelas. So unfortunately, right now, the people who are making these superhero TV shows do not understand what is the essence of a superhero story. And the main essence, and I think like without this you do not have a superhero story, is the fight between a superhero and a villain. Like as long as you have the simple format of Superman fighting Lex Luthor, who is trying to rob a bank and Superman is stopping him, unless you have that, it's not a superhero story. It's a telenovela. And it caters to a completely different audience, and this is why they can afford to make all of these jokes and all of these insults towards geeks. Because they're not their audience. In fact, journalists have released a long list of articles, all in the span of a day, saying that geekdom is over, geeks aren't your audience, like literally telling the industry that you need to shift gears. And for a while it was profitable because, you know, while the wider audience is definitely going to put their butts in seats and may watch your movie, over the course of time, you notice that the wider audience isn't the ones that are purchasing the keychains. They're not the ones that are purchasing the shirts. They're not the ones that are talking about your movie, that are trying to promote it. You know, like, they are a type of consumer, but they're not fanatical. They're not the fans. The fans are now watching anime, much to the dismay and horror of people at Hollywood who are noticing that their pay piggies are going away. So this is the main reason that you have this. And it will continue for, you know, as long as people realize, oh, hold on a little bit, Invincible is really popular. Why is that? Oh, The Boys is really popular. Why is that? Oh, because they're not insulting their fans, and they're actually trying to cater to teenagers which are interested in sex and violence. I'm sorry, it's normal and healthy. This is really why Thor was popular. It's because teenage women, they really like the casting, they really like the actor, they like the romance story that was there, right? Like, putting actual human romance and human emotions does indeed sell something. Telenovelas are for elderly women. But unfortunately, again, elderly women do not buy keychains, they do not buy t-shirts with the superhero, they do not promote the brand. They are a type of audience, they have stuff that should cater to them, but it's not going to be as popular as comic books and video games have been. Let me know what you guys think, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.